Kash Patel took a snorkel. And I just want to read from some of the reporting on this because I think it's absolutely ridiculous. This is from the Associated Press. Emails show FBI, the headline, FBI Director Kash Patel's Hawaii trip included VIP snorkel at the memorial. With few exceptions, snorkeling and diving are off limits around the USS Arizona. The battleship, now a military cemetery reachable only by boat, has stood as one of the nation's most hallowed sites since Japan bombed and sank it in 1941. I do believe that not since 1993 has anyone gone snorkeling at the memorial. So that's the leadership at the FBI, right? And I bring that up because there is new reporting from our colleagues, Carol Leonnig and Ken Dilanian, that FBI officials, Director Brennan, are now interviewing CIA, people at the CIA. And I'm just wondering, what do you make of this? Like, is this, and frankly, is this within protocol? It feels to me like they are on a vendetta outside and inside the government to find anyone that is not rowing in their direction, which I would argue their direction is quite corrupt, and it is going, headfirst into retribution because that is the guiding principle. The president has said it himself. It seems like that they are on a fishing expedition to find anyone so that they can get them out of the government and, frankly, try to get some of their quote-unquote political enemies in the process, of which the president has named you to be, which is insane.
Well, Simone, over the past 60 months, I think there have been just regular questions raised about the competence or not of the leadership of the FBI and of the senior law enforcement officer of this country. And we have this pattern, and we see these reports, and we also see footage about how Kash Patel comports himself, overseas. And again, this is an example of what the FBI agents and others are seeing of their leadership. But if Kash Patel and others and Todd Blanche are just going to pursue these what appear to be vendettas on the part of Donald Trump, it just trashes the whole concept of the rule of law and the system of justice in this country. If these are going to be instruments and pawns of Donald Trump as he again pursues his adversaries, his perceived enemies, as a way to further advance his personal interests. And this is something that, again, all senior officials in the government, at least through my experience through 6 administrations, they took those responsibilities and obligations seriously. And the political corruption that seems to be rampant at so many levels in so many areas, I think this is something, again, that should worry every American.
Director, given, how we're talking about all of this right now and how we're framing these conversations over the past few weeks and months and even years since Trump has been on the political scene, it has resulted in a lot of upheaval regarding institutions and their processes and the obligations you have, as we're talking about, the ethics oath that you took, you held in deep regard because you understood the responsibilities that came with that. They weren't just words on paper. You now have a number of folks inside and outside of government, mostly outside, advising how we begin to get ahead of the reforms that are necessarily going to be to be put in place after this administration is in the ash bin of history. And I think that begins actually in 2029. You've got an anti-corruption push by Democrats, Jamie Raskin sort of previewing where they'd like to go with this. The package touches on everything from the presidential pardon power to foreign meddling in U.S. elections. The bill also aims to improve congressional oversight of the White House and executive branch by enhancing penalties against individuals who do not abide by congressional subpoenas. That, to me, is just the tip of what will have to be done that touches not just on the process, but the ethics and the moralities and those things that once stood in the vanguard of protecting these institutions. What would you put on the table, sir, having been inside? What other types of things should we as American people be looking for to reset our relationship with the government when it comes to how it performs and how it does its job?
Well, to me, it really comes down to Congress and how it's acting. And all those reforms that you mentioned, I think, are critically important. I'd like to think that there is going to be some type of bipartisan effort and interest in this. I haven't given up completely on the Republican Party. There are some Republicans, I think, still in Congress who do have a moral and political compass that is ethically anchored. But there are so many things. Look what's happened over the past year as a result of Donald Trump wanting to get more Republicans into Congress with all this gerrymandering.
Right.
That is really difficult issue because we want to make sure American people are going to be well represented in the halls of Congress. And if you have these political battles and things that are being driven purely for political purposes to preserve and to protect one's partisan equities, we're not going to be doing justice to the American people on this. So I think across the board, you can have some outside groups, they're going to provide some recommendations, whatever, but ultimately it's going to be up to the members of Congress to set aside these partisan, highly partisan interests to try to prevent a real democracy from flourishing here in this country.
Well, just to underline, Michael, what the director has said there, I'm struck by the way that CNN sort of articulated part of the challenge around what it is that Todd Blanche is facing, and where, to me, it weaves into this entire conversation is that, yes, this is about Todd Blanche. Yes, this is about Kash Patel, but it is about the predicate that this president has set that makes anyone in these positions have to choose between absolute loyalty and actual functionality. Let me read you just a little bit of that reporting. Recusal is a word that comes with treacherous consequences in the Trump era, including in the case of former Attorney General Jeff Sessions, who Trump tormented after he recused himself from overseeing what eventually became the Mueller investigation. Blanche's choice is either to oversee investigations the president cares deeply about, but risk damaging their viability in court, or to recuse himself and risk incurring the president's wrath. I mean, this is the challenge, Simone, which is, yes, either of these individuals can exit. But if the standard that the president has set for whomever comes next and needs to make it through a Senate confirmation is absolute loyalty or the ability to do your job, then no one can actually do the job, Simone.
To me, and I never thought I'd be using Jeff Sessions as a shining example of doing the right thing here, but I think the folks from the first Trump administration some of them have demonstrated what the folks in the second Trump administration could do. Todd Blanche doesn't have to do what the president is asking him to do, Director Brennan. He is making a choice. It is a choice. He is choosing the people in this government who are choosing to take up these bogus investigations against you and James Comey and Tish James and Lord knows whoever else. The people who are choosing to go out here and carry the president's water. Kash Patel is choosing to act a fool at work every day and still keep his job. That's a choice. And I think that they could have made another choice, but because they have made this one, I think that there need to be some consequences somewhere down the line from somebody for their choices.
You're absolutely right. I mean, yes, we blame a lot of this on Donald Trump, but every individual makes their own decision. They have the free will to decide, I'm not going to do the wrong thing. But so many of them continue to do the wrong thing in support of Donald Trump. When are they going to find their integrity, their sense of what the difference between right and wrong, and say, no, I'm not going to do this? Some of these prosecutors have stepped away or have been pushed aside. Let's see what's going to happen at the senior ranks of the U.S. government, of the Trump administration. Who is going to say enough is enough and mean it and say, I'm not going to go along with something that is so wrong-headed and inconsistent with what this country is all about?